This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle of BenSettle.com, and show number 3. Jonathan, we're kicking off here in January. This has turned out pretty good so far. Last week, I said we would talk about why real game is no game. And I didn't really explain what that meant because I wanted to leave a little cliffhanger. Because people, the guru fanboys especially who be listening to this show, they're like all into open loops and all. Ooh, I left an open loop and
you
I closed the open
boy.
Loop. What was that?
NLP, right?
Oh yeah. NLP, open loops, man. I got an open loop in my email, man. It's so cool. It's so ninja.
You know what I was thinking about? You were saying something earlier when I think it was in episode 1 where you were talking about how you just wanted to mess with the audience. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, pattern interrupt, man. That's totally cool.
Pattern interrupt. There was a term I heard last year. I'm not going to say who said it. This person despises me.
Oh, really? Wait a second.
I think so. This person despises one of your other podcasters too. I'm pretty sure this person does. I actually don't know if they despise me or not, but I know they despise one. I know they despise one of your other podcasters, who I will not name.
When we get off the air, you're going to name it.
I'll be happy to off the air. And they were using this. I'm not going to say who it was because I have nothing against this person. Actually, I thought the person was pretty cool. Okay, so no big deal. But guilt, but maybe anger at me by association. I don't know. But they used the term brand interruption, which I have no freaking clue what that means. Like I kept what does that even freaking mean? Brand interruption? What the whatever. Anyway, when you brought up a pattern interrupt, it reminded me of that for some reason that I don't understand. Brand interruption. But yeah, the open loops, dude. I got an open loop in my email. You saw how I closed that nested loop, and I'm thinking, I just all I can do is sigh out loud when I hear this kind of stuff, right? For one thing, I'm glad these are people. Hopefully these are people that I compete against in some way because they don't get it. They don't really understand it. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of principles versus tactics today, and a lot more next week. But when it comes to these so-called open loops. I don't know why I find that. I don't know why I find that so amusing. When it comes to open loops, my whole thought is this. Now, maybe it's just because I'm old school copywriting and I don't think about these things like the internet guys, like people who are just brought up on the internet and they don't understand real old school direct response. They've never learned it at the feet of or through a book or somebody who actually does the old school stuff. They're kind of getting it third generation taught to them. Like when I'm writing an email, Jonathan, I don't think I need to open a loop or close a loop. It's going to naturally happen when they buy the product. That's when the loop will close.
Yeah.
I don't care about them reading the next email and all this other stuff, which a lot of people do. They like to open loops so that they'll read the next email, which, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do or anything. There's nothing wrong with it. But my whole thought is I want the sale. That's what I'm going for. And so when I tease something, it naturally opens a loop, so-called loop. I'm doing air quotes as I say that, of course. And then it closes when they get the product and they read the secret. That's when it closes. I just don't understand why people make this more complicated than it needs to be. But whatever. It is what it is. So all right, back to the actual topic. Yeah, back to the topic. So real game is no game. This is something I've heard podcaster, comedian, former pimp. So he calls himself a former pimp. And I guess he was a male exotic dancer, won trophies for being a male exotic dancer. I don't know, back in his youth.
Trophies for that?
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. I've never, really met one before, but he's done all these things. His name's Dante Nero. It was the Bage Phillips show. Very, very raunchy show, but their whole show is about how to get your balls back. That's what it is for guys who have lost their balls. Now they want their balls back. I highly recommend it for guys to listen to it, but it's, it's not family friendly. So if you're easily offended and you're a precious little snowflake who melts at the sound of something that offends your precious ears, I wouldn't recommend listening. But he always says this thing, the real game is no game. Now he's talking about the dating game. Like there's this thing called game. Anybody who's listening should know and understand what this is. It's like game. It's like everyone has game with how they try to get a girl. Now, some game is bad and some game is good and, whatever it is, but everybody has some kind of game. And he's talking about real game is no game. When you get to the point where you're not having to think about all this stuff, you just kind of go on autopilot and that's how you go find girls. That's what he's talking about. But this applies just as much to business as it does anything else. And so what I want to do is go through this because I know there's people listening to this, Jonathan, of varying levels of skill and experience. There's raw wriggling newbies. I always think of like a wriggling animal when I think of a raw newbie, wriggling newbie. And then you have like seasoned professionals that listen to this show, and you have people in between. So everybody's going to be kind of on a different scale here, but I'm talking to the newbie right now. I'm talking to the noobs. Okay. I want to help the noobs out, Jonathan, because nobody did this for me when I was starting out. I don't know if, when I got started in this, it was like in 2002 or whatever it was, you didn't have then what you have now. You didn't have like huge support networks and stuff and people that you could just talk to. And I mean, it was hard to find any information, anything. It was hard to find good copywriting books. Now there's so many out there. It's like you have to figure out which ones are worth even wasting your time with and which aren't. But back then it's like you only had a few to choose from for the most part. And so it is. So but I'm going to walk. So let's say somebody's starting out as a brand new wriggling email. They want to get good at email, Jonathan. They don't know anything, right? They were reading my website. They read one of my emails and they're saying, I want to do what Ben does. I want to write emails like this. Let's just say they're in that mindset. God knows why they would be in that mindset, but let's assume they are for a second. They are at a stage called unconscious incompetence, meaning they don't know what they don't know. They don't know anything. And, actually this would be the stage they're in before they read my email. Jonathan, let me back up a little bit.
All right.
Because I think I just overstepped.
Screwed the pooch.
Screwed the pooch here a little bit. That's like man, whoever made that up, that has got to be like the most disgusting and screwed the pooch. It's terrible. People, it's like you ever like listen, like you ever like hear like a common phrase and then like really think about it. You're like, what? Who the hell came up with that? You know what I mean? But this would be before they ever find me, right? I'm talking about people who are listening to my show and they like what I have to say. Okay, we're not talking to just anybody here. We're talking to high quality people, high quality noobs. Before they find me, they are unconsciously incompetent. They don't know anything about email. They don't even know they like email. They don't even know they want to know email copywriting. They don't know any of that stuff. They're unconscious incompetence. It doesn't even register for them. Then they find my website or they listen to the show or whatever. They read one of my emails and they get inspired and they want to learn how to do this stuff. At that stage, they're at the conscious incompetence. I mean, now they know that they don't know. Like this is this new thing. They know they're new at this. They know they're a noob. They know I'm going to mock them and make fun of them and all this stuff because that's what I do. I mock the white belts basically. Jonathan, I really don't teach white belts. I don't know if you realize that or not. People always ask me like, why do you have like a basic, email? Like I don't even know how to get an autoresponder up and I don't even know what an autoresponder is. And I don't even know how to find a good company and all that stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're white belt. I don't teach white belts. I have nothing against white belts, but I like to teach black belts to become tougher. That's what I want to do. And obviously talking about from an email copywriting point of view, not real martial arts, all right? For anyone who's like insanely literal about these things. At that point, I don't teach the white belt. So at the unconscious incompetence stage and the conscious incompetence stage, they're kind of like white belts. I can't do much for them. I can, if they want to stick around and they want to just watch the rest of us play or fight and spar and all that, they can. But the reality is I don't market for them. I don't actively go after them. Now they start learning a little bit, right? They're starting to learn some skills. Maybe they're observing what I'm doing in my emails. Maybe they've bought email players. Maybe they bought another thing I've done about email or something. Maybe they listened to some interviews I've done about email or some trainings or when I was talking somewhere, public speaking. Now they're at this, they start getting some skill at it. It becomes conscious competence. In other words, they're still having to, they have to purposely do things right. They still have to think through everything. They have to, it's a little bit of a struggle for them. It's not just automatic. Like it'd be like driving a car. Someone who's learning how to drive a car in driver's ed, they're always looking. They're gripping the steering wheel. They're looking at everything. They're consciously trying to keep their eyes on the road and all this other stuff. And it's fine. It's conscious competence. This is the stage where they could last a very long time, depending on what you're trying to learn and how good you are at it and how much time you want to put into something. But this conscious competence would be where most of my audience right now is at. My whole point. Most of the people listening to this are at the conscious competence stage. What you want to ultimately get to is the unconscious competence stage. This is where you don't even think about it. You just sit down and belt out an email. Jonathan, when I did those launch for my villains book, right? A few months ago, I wrote 18 emails for that. I believe I sent out 18 emails. I didn't have to think about any of them. I sure as hell didn't think about, do I put an open loop in here? That stuff. I didn't do any of that stuff. I wrote them in like 2 hours. It was very pleasant work. I don't think, I better use a book title subject line, or I better do a nuclear options. These are terms that I use that I teach my email players playbook. I don't think about that. I don't think, do I tell a story? Oh, wait, do I, I don't have to think about it. I just do it. Jonathan, I assume you're at this point too. You just kind of sit down and you just do it. That's unconscious competence. This is the sweet spot of whatever you're trying to learn. When I go to Wing Chun Kung Fu lessons, believe me, I'm in the conscious competence phase, but man, I'm going to be there for a very long time. I can't wait till I'm like Sifu, who's at the unconscious competence. This guy just does things. You could completely blindfold this guy and he'll still kill you if he wanted to. Wow. He's just at that point where he knows the system so well that it's completely on autopilot for him. For me, I have to sit there and think through this stuff. I'm constantly I'm trying to get my coordination right and all this and that and all the other things. That's conscious competence. It's a frustrating spot to be in, depending on what you're trying to learn and how eagerly you want to learn something. But the goal is to get to unconscious competence, and that is where real game is no game. So when it comes, we'll keep with the email analogy going here. I don't have to I don't have to think when I sit down to write an email. Well, what do I say? How do I close this? How do I do a transition from the story to the product and all that? It just happens. It just, I don't even think about it. One way or the other. I don't worry about it. I don't think about it. I just know my email system inside and out, obviously, because I teach it, and I trust the system. To me, that's the spot to be in. Real game is no game. When you're out there trying to game a girl or whatever guys do, and they're trying to pick up chicks and all that, a real game is not having to think, I have these one-liners. Which one-liners should I use? How should I open this up? What should I do? How should I escalate this? And all these other things that they constantly think about. When you're at a certain level like that, real game is no game. You don't have to think about any of that stuff. That's why there's certain guys that just go out there and they'll come home with someone every time. To them, it's completely unconscious competence. They just do it. Think about pilots and all that, like jet fighter pilots. They're at a point where they're just doing things. They get lost in this zone. They blank slating is what they call it, from what I understand, where you're just kind of following the system. You're just reacting to the environment and all is good. It's unconscious competence. They're not sitting there thinking about, what controls do I use and, do I do this with the engine and all that? They don't think about that. It's all automatic. And this is where you want to be, because eventually, if you want to get good at email or anything else, this is the goal, to get to the unconscious competence phase. Now, question is, how do you get there, Jonathan? This is what I know people listening might be thinking. How do you get there, Ben? Guide me to the unconscious competence phase. See, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you how you get there. Okay, and this is going to be something that guru fanboys especially will not like what I'm about to say, because this just ruins their whole world paradigm and all that, whatever word you want to use. You have to focus on principles and not tactics. So it starts with principles and then you move. And we're going to talk way more about this next week, but I'm going to just kind of dive into it a little bit here. You're much better off having a principle-based business, a principle-based approach to marketing or whatever you're trying to do. In other words, let me think of an example here. And I'll talk more about this next week, but I'm going to give a little preview for next week. So let's say somebody comes to me and says, Ben, I need help with this. How should I write this sequence of emails? Should I start by agitating them? And then should I start by trying to make them feel better? And should I try to inspire them and all this stuff? And that would be a very tactical approach to putting an email sequence together. That's the wrong way to do it. First, you look at your market and you say, okay, where's their mind right now? What do I have that's going to help these people? How do they like to communicate? What is the problem they have? How can I give them a vision of this problem they have so that they're ready to hear my sales pitch? This stuff, what I just said, will make way more sense next week. But is right now, I'm a Jim Camp fanboy, Jonathan, as I've told you before.
Yeah.
And this is straight out of his teeth. I learned this from him. He's principles versus tactics. So if you want to get to the point where you're unconscious competent, you have to master principles first. And then you can work the tactics in, because then you'll be working them into a methodology that makes sense. A lot of people just come out swinging. Again, think about the email fanboy who goes, I need to do an open loop. Should I do an open loop? That's like totally pointless and irrelevant, especially right away. What you should be thinking is, okay, who's my prospect? Oh, affiliate marketers. Okay, so what is it that they want that this product can help them achieve? Like, that's how you come at it from a principle thing. Principle is like, that the offer is more important than the copy. So you think about the offer first. Again, otherwise people just come in with copywriting tactics. Ooh, I use this phrase this headline and all that. No, it doesn't start with that. It starts with the market, and it starts with your offer, and then you can do the tactics, the copywriting stuff. But people do that. Then you can start screwing around with open loops, I guess, and all the other things you want to do. But this is how you get to the unconscious competence phase. You master principles. In Wing Chun Kung Fu, there's like 4 forms you got to learn. You master those first. You don't just come in there doing flying kicks and all this stuff, which actually doesn't even exist as far as I know in Wing Chun. But you don't come in trying to snatch people's eyes out like Kill Bill. Pai Mei snatching eyes out of people. First, you learn how to like punch. You know what I mean? And I've told this story before, Jonathan, but I'm going to tell it again. I'm going to tell it again because it bears being repeated. So there's this upstanding businessman named Kevin Trudeau, who I believe is in prison right now. But he was like in the MLM company that I was in when I was in MLM, when I first got started. And he would do a lot of events and that sort of thing, and did a lot of speaking and that. And he told the story about when he went to learn martial arts from this guy named Master Tai. Master Tai being like this, I don't know what he taught or whatever, but he was like some kind of badass guy. And he said he went in there and he went to Master Tai and he said, I want you to teach me something advanced. I want advanced. And Master Tai said, advanced? And he goes, yes, advanced. So Master Tai takes him over by this lit candle, and he punches right next to the candle, Master Tai does, so fast that the wind from the air that was moved because of his punch blew the candle out. And he goes, like that? Advanced? And Kevin goes, yeah, that's what I will learn, advanced. And he goes, well, first I have to show you how to punch. So that's what's principle versus tactics. The tactics, the sexy thing, is being able to blow the candle out by punching next to it. The principle is actually learning how to punch first. So again, we're going to go way more into this next week, but this is how you get to the unconscious competence stage. Learn the raw fundamentals and the basics, what I call the dull, unpolished objects versus the bright, shiny objects. That's how you do it. It's not sexy. It's not necessarily fun, but that's how you get to the unconscious competence stage. If all you do is focus on tactics and, trying to be cool and opening loops and all this stuff, and you're missing the whole point of, how to structure an offer, it's going to take you a lot longer, and if you ever get there at all. So, but next week, Jonathan, I'm going to do a little open loop now. Actually, you know what? You've inspired me to do an open loop.
Future pace open loop.
Next week, we are going to talk more about that. The whole show will be about this, principles versus tactics. But that's my open loop for you. So you'll have to come back next week to learn more about it. But that's next week, Jonathan. That's all I got for this time.
All right. Good stuff. Another bensettle.com show is in the can. We will be back with you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email player's newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.